Thomas was a doubter.
Sarah was impatient.
Noah got drunk.
Ruth was a foreigner.
David, he had an affair.
Peter had a temper.
Martha was a worrier.
Miriam was a gossip.
Gideon was insecure.
Mary was a teenager.
Lazarus was dead.
God worked through these people despite their faults.
Despite what other people viewed as limitations.
God's power works best in weakness.
His grace is all we need.
So when someone asks, God used who? You can answer,
God used me.
Let me be one of the first to wish you a happy Mother's Day here today. And it's a great time. That's why we had the kids, the baby dedication. And I'm fired up that you're here. Now, I just want to know who I'm talking to. And actually, I want to know what kind of kids are in the room. But how many of you moms here today, how many of you moms got some type of coffee in bed, tea in bed, breakfast in bed, maybe even a high five in bed, at least that, just by a show of hands? Okay, that's not nearly as many as I had hoped for, okay? I feel that as a pastor, I have failed some of you kids. So if you did not get the coffee in bed, the tea in bed, you need to know that you're in luck, that we have a gift for you as you leave. And so the incredible prayer that Alicia read during the worship, it was written by one of our staff members. She's a mom. And we just said, hey, it would be really cool if you could write a prayer. And so she actually wrote that prayer. So we captured it and put it on a really nice pink card here. Just says a mother's prayer. And so if you're a mom, this is our gift to you. If you're a kid who did not get your mom breakfast in bed, you're welcome. You can have this. Grab it for your mom. But it's just the prayer on the back and then that on front. So it's just our way to say thank you. And we just want to make sure every mom here in this room and watching online feels honored and appreciated. Now, Mother's Day is kind of expensive for me. All right? I've got a mom and I've got a wife and I've got kids with no money. So kind of how all that works. And so, purchasing things. And I got curious. I'm curious by nature, so I began to do a little research. I wonder how much money we spend on Mother's Day. And so there's this new thing out there called Google.com. You can go there and research whatever you want to. And it's amazing. And so I found this website called statisticbrain.com, and it just gave total amounts of dollars and money spent. So just for reference, the total number of moms in the U.S., 85.4 million. Total number of mothers in the U.S., 85.4 million. Total amount of money spent on Mother's Day cards annually, 671 million. And then the total amount of money that will be spent for Mother's Day, for Mother's total amount, $20.7 billion on moms. So, to all the moms, thank you for helping out our economy. We greatly appreciate that. So I began to read that, and I was like, well, that's a lot of money. Then I began to read some other stats on there, and then I began to question how accurate these stats are, because the next line down, it says what moms want to what they want to receive on Mother's Day. So it was just from numbers 1 down to 10. So the number one thing moms want to receive on Mother's Day is something homemade. I thought, okay, something homemade. They want to receive that. That sounds great. Something homemade. Second thing they want to receive, number 2, is dinner. The number 3 are greeting cards. And kind of goes down the list. And so far they were hitting everything right. But then I came to number 7. Number 7 thing that moms want to receive on Mother's Day, books. Books. And I thought, okay, 7th, that's probably where they need to belong to. And then I read number 8. This is number 8. This is below books. The 8th thing that moms want to receive on Mother's Day are spa packages. Now, I'm not a mom, obviously. I don't want to speak on behalf of all mothers in the room, but I do have a mom, and I am married to Brianna, who's a mom. And it just seems to me that those are a bit out of order. Because I came to Brianna and go, hey, would you like, a gift card to Barnes & Noble or a day of manis, pedis, facials, and massages? the choice is pretty clear, but it's my job as a pastor, to know the church that I'm leading. And so I just want to make sure that I'm on the same page with all the moms in the room. So if you're a mom in the room and you would prefer a spa package over a book, would you just raise your hand just so Yes. You keep them up, keep them up, keep them up, keep them up. For those of you that forgot breakfast in bed, you're welcome. Now, regardless if you like books or mani-pedis, here's the point. The point is this, is that Mother's Day is the one day we treat our moms the way that they should be treated the other 364 days out of the year. Amen? Okay, that was a little less enthusiastic than I had hoped for. Now, today is Mother's Day, so you're probably, you're so caught off on that whole mani-pedi thing. Let me tell you that again. Mother's Day is the one day we treat our moms the way that they should be treated and honored the other 364 days of the year. Amen? Oh, very good. Okay. So we're talking about this whole series of God used who? God used some of the most unlikely people, situations, characters in the Bible to accomplish some of the most unbelievable things for His glory and for His will and for His purpose. And we love stories like that, to see the most unlikely used to accomplish the most unbelievable. And today we're looking at two ladies, and they had an in-law relationship. It was a mother-in-law and it was a daughter-in-law, and they were poor, they were destitute. One was a foreigner in a foreign land, down and out. And toward the end of their story, God used these two ladies, and their names are forever cemented in the Bible in one of the most really cool, really unique ways. And the two ladies we're going to look at in their relationship, their dedication to each other and to God, are the ladies by the name of Naomi and of Ruth. And if you've got a Bible, go ahead and grab it. I need you to go to the book of Ruth. It's in the Old Testament. And if you've never read the entire story of Ruth, golly, you owe it to yourself. It takes you 20, 25 minutes. And it's just a fascinating story with so many little nuances. But I just want to look at today just the relationship between Naomi and between Ruth. Now, Naomi was married, had two sons, and they're from the town of Bethlehem, but they had left to a town of Moab. They're there, and while they're there, over a span of 10 years, Naomi, her husband dies, as well as her two sons. So she goes away as a wife and as a mother, and now she is a widow, and she's lost two sons. So she's left with just her and her two daughter-in-laws. Her two daughter-in-laws are Orpah and Ruth. And so Naomi's going to go back to her homeland of Bethlehem. She tells Orpah and Ruth, hey, listen, you guys go back to your hometown. It's, go remarry, go make a life. And Orpah says one thing and the Ruth says another. Ruth chapter 1, verse 14. Says, and again they wept together. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung tightly to Naomi. Look, Naomi said to her, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. You should do the same. And then here's one of the most famous phrases that you're going to hear Ruth say. But Ruth replied, don't ask me to leave you and turn back. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me severely if I allow anything but death to separate us. When Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she said nothing more. And this begins one of the most intriguing but most determined relationships between Ruth and Naomi. Ruth, you just go on back, you know what, it's just me. And Ruth goes, no. Your God will be my God, your people will be my people. And she clung tightly and she went back. They walk back into town. Naomi comes back a very different lady than when she left. She left married and with two sons and now comes back without any sons and as a widow. And look at her feeling in verse 20. She says, don't call me Naomi, she responded. Instead, call me Mara. For the Almighty has made life very bitter for me. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me home empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has caused me to suffer and the Almighty has sent such tragedy upon me? And my guess is there are many moms here in this room that you have either been in a situation like that or you may currently find yourself in that current situation. tragedy and suffering, and you're just down and out, you're frustrated, you're confused, you're angry, you're disappointed, you fill in the blank with whatever emotion that you're feeling. And that's the way Naomi felt. She goes, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, because my life is no longer full, but it is now bitter. And she finds herself there, but she finds herself there with her daughter-in-law, Ruth. And together they walk back into Bethlehem, both widows, both poor, both destitute, and Ruth being a foreigner in a foreign land. It's about as down and out as you could be. But they had to eat and they had to survive. And so Ruth says, you know what? I'll go out into the fields. And there is an old law that said the field owners had to leave the edges of the grain unpicked for those that were poor and for the foreigners in the land. So Ruth goes out there and she begins to pick the barley and to gather it up to take back to her mother-in-law. She's out there working hard, sweating day in and day out, only takes breaks when she needs some water. And the men in the field begin to take notice, and so does the owner of the field, a guy named Boaz. And he begins to show kindness to her, and Ruth begins to wonder why. And look what happens in chapter 2, verse 10. Ruth fell at his feet and thanked him warmly. She said, what have I done to deserve such kindness, she asked. I'm only a foreigner. Yes, I know, Boaz replied, but I also know about everything you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband. I have heard how you left your father and mother and your own land to live here among complete strangers. May the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge, reward you fully for what you have done. Ruth goes out there and works willingly, not just for herself, but for her mother-in-law. She understands that she's out there, and all of a sudden people begin to take notice, and so does Boaz. And he goes and says, I understand what you're doing, not only for yourself, but for your mother-in-law, and I understand you've come to take refuge under the wings of the God Almighty. And he begins to show kindness to Ruth. And so Ruth goes back and begins to tell Naomi what happens, and look at what she says in verse 20. May the Lord bless him, Naomi told her daughter-in-law. He is showing kindness to us as well as to your dead husband. That man is one of our closest relatives and one of our family redeemers. Then Ruth said, what's more, Boaz even told me to come back and stay with his harvesters until the entire harvest is completed. Good, Naomi exclaimed. Do as he said, my daughter. Stay with his young women right through the whole harvest. You might be harassed in other fields, but you will be safe with him. Ruth comes back and tells Naomi what happened, and Naomi, being the wise mother-in-law, knows what is going on, knows that Boaz is one of the family redeemers, and says, stay close. And then in the next chapter, Naomi goes a little farther, and she tells Ruth, she goes, hey, when you go back, why don't you put a little perfume on this time? Why don't you put on your nicest dress? And let me just tell you, if you're a young adult here in this room, long before Match.com existed, your mother did. And your mother's been trying to set you up with a nice guy or a nice gal ever since you were born. And Naomi is that place. She goes, when you go back, and she says, here's what's going to happen. You need to go and, put on some perfume. And Boaz takes notice and says, listen, I'm going to take care of things. And look what happens in chapter 3, verse 16. It says, when Ruth went back to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked, she goes, what happened, my daughter? Ruth told Naomi everything Boaz had done for her, and she added, he gave me these 6 scoops of barley and said, don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. Smart man. Then Naomi said to her, just be patient, my daughter, until we have heard what happens. The man won't rest until he has settled things today. And I want you to look at verse 18. It says, Naomi said to her, just be patient, my what? My daughter. If you're a mother in this room, here's what I want you to hear if you hear nothing else. Motherhood is not defined by DNA. Motherhood is not defined by DNA. Every time Naomi began to reference Ruth, it was not daughter-in-law. It was not anything else other than daughter. So if you're a mother here in this room, you need to know that your motherhood is not defined by your DNA. And so yes, you may be the biological mom, but you may also be the stepmom. You may also be the mother that has adopted a son or a daughter, that is fostering a son or daughter. You may be an aunt. You may be a grandmother. You may be a neighbor. You may just be an older woman pouring into a younger man or younger woman. But motherhood is not defined by DNA. And unfortunately, as a pastor, I've had to be there and walk couples through this moment where they want to have kids, ladies who have that desire to be a mother but cannot have kids, and to walk them through that process. And if that is you, you need to understand that though you may not have a child with your DNA, that does not mean you cannot still be a mom. Motherhood is not defined by DNA. Motherhood is defined by a relationship of love. So yes, that might mean you're the biological mom, but it may mean that you're the stepmom, or you're the mom that's fostering kids, or you've adopted kids, or you're just an aunt that pours into nieces and nephews, and you're the mother figure. You're a grandmother that's raising your grandson or granddaughter, but you're their mother figure. You're a neighbor, you're an older woman pouring into a younger man or younger daughter. DNA does not define motherhood. A relationship of love does. Through this moment, you see Ruth and Naomi going through frustrations, both losing their husband, Naomi losing her sons, going back poor and destitute, Ruth working out in the fields, and every time it was my daughter, my daughter, my daughter. So Boaz, he redeems things, they get married, and here's how the story ends. Chapter 4, verse 13. It says, so Boaz took Ruth into his home. She became his wife. When he slept with her, the Lord enabled her to become pregnant, and she gave birth to a son. Then the women of the town said to Naomi, praise the Lord, who has now provided a redeemer for your family. May this child be famous in Israel. May he restore your youth and care for you in your old age. For he is the son of your daughter-in-law, who loves you and has been better to you than 7 sons. Naomi took the baby and cuddled him to her breast, and she cared for him as if he were her own. The neighbor women said, now at last Naomi has a son again. And they named him Obed. He became the father of Jesse and the grandfather of David. And if you're a mother in this room, only you know the feelings that Naomi felt. She comes back home, call me Mara. It's bitter. She's there. She sees everything unfold. And then that moment, she picks up her grandson. And those emotions that she must have been feeling, thinking back to when she left, to when she lost her husband, to when she lost her sons, to this moment, that God restores everything. And here she is holding her grandson. And what you need to understand is that God used these 2 ladies, Naomi and Ruth, poor, destitute, one's a foreigner in a foreign land. And because of their dedication to God and their dedication to each other, they have a son who goes down to Obed, to Jesse, down to David, meaning King David. You follow the lineage all the way down. And these 2 ladies, they are in the genealogy of Jesus. To go from losing husbands to losing sons, to coming back poor, to working out in the fields, not knowing what's going to happen, to winding up being in the genealogy of Jesus. So here's what I want you to grasp today if you're a mother and if you're a child. If you're a mother, stay faithful. And if you're a child, stay grateful. If you're a mother, stay faithful to God and to your children. If you're a child, stay grateful to God, to your mother. Let me just talk to you moms for a minute. You stay faithful to God in the situations that He's bringing you through. And at this moment, you may feel more like chapter 1 than really chapter 4. You feel more like Naomi in chapter 1, that bitterness, that frustration, that tragedy has hit your life and rocked your world. If that is you, stay faithful to the God of the universe. You have no idea what He is doing in your life. Stay faithful. He has a plan. He knows what is going on. You stay faithful to God. You stay faithful to your kids. You pray for them. You believe in them. You support them. Because my guess is that there have been some point in your children's life where you may have been the only person in their life who's praying for them, who's believing in them, and who's supporting them. You believe in them, you support them, you pray for them when teachers don't, when coaches don't, when employers don't, when college admissions don't. You pray for them, you believe in them, you support your kids. And if you're a mother and you have a son or a daughter that is that prodigal son or daughter, don't forget that story where the dad is there and he's constantly on the lookout looking for his son to return home. If that is you and you've got a prodigal son or daughter, if you're a mom, you stay faithful. And you stay on your knees before God. And I understand that there's some moms here in this room that have worn out the carpet with their knees because they've been praying for that son or for that daughter. You keep at it and you stay faithful. Mothers pray for their kids, they believe in their kids, and they support their kids when the rest of the world doesn't. And if you're a mom, I just want to encourage you today to stay faithful. Mothers believe in their kids. They believe the best in their kids. They believe that their kids are angels when the rest of us know that they're not. I read a story this week about a mom who was sending her son off to college, and it was the first time he was going to be away, and so she decided to write a letter to the president of the college. Here's what the letter says. Dear sir, my son has been accepted for admission to your college, and soon he will be leaving me. I am writing to ask that you give your personal attention to the selection of his roommate. I want to be sure that his roommate is not the kind of person who uses foul language or tells off-color jokes, smokes, drinks, or chases after girls. Some of you are going back to your college days at this moment. She says, I hope you'll understand why I'm appealing to you directly. You see, this is the first time my son will be away from home, except for his 3 years in the Marine Corps. Every child is an angel. You moms, you stay faithful to God and where He's leading you and guiding you and directing you, whether you find yourself in tragedy or in triumph, and you stay faithful to your kids. You may be the only person in their life that's praying for them, that's believing in them, and that's supporting them no matter what. Now, if you're a child, you look at the example of Ruth. Boaz knew that she came to take refuge under the wings of God Almighty. He noticed that she was out there working not just for herself, but for her mother-in-law. If you are a child, you stay grateful to God. You stay grateful to your mother. Your mother has prayed more prayers for you than you can imagine. She has believed in you when no one else did. She has supported you when no one else did. You stay grateful to your mother. And the truth is, you will never, ever be able to fully thank your mom for everything that she has done for you on this earth, but it would be a good idea to try. You'll never be able to fully thank your mom for everything she has done for you while you're here on this planet, but it is a good idea to try. Paul will write in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 18, in everything give thanks, for this is the will of God. And you thank God for your mom, whether she's your biological mom, she's your stepmom, she has adopted you, she's your foster mom, she's an aunt, she's a grandmother, she's just an older lady. But that mother figure in your life that's not defined by a DNA, but by a relationship of love, you show gratitude to her. You show gratitude to God, you show gratitude for her. And the things that you have done and lived, my guess is there is a mother figure in your life that has been praying for you, supporting in you, and believing you when no one else has. And this week I was thinking through my life growing up and things that had happened that I had yet to thank my mom for. And I was reminded of one, and I began to text she and my dad last night of what had happened. And I was like, did this happen? And it did. And what had happened is when I was 8 years old, my dad at that time drove a Honda Civic hatchback. And it was a manual transmission, and it was a little red hatchback. And I was 8 years old. We were in the garage. He was replacing the battery on it or something. And And I was hanging out in the garage with my dad. I was sitting in the driver's seat just watching him, and he was my hero. And he replaced the battery, and he goes, "Hey, son, why don't you start the car?" Now, in those days, if the car was in manual, you could start the car, and it would run. And I go, "How do you start the car, Dad?" And he goes, "Oh, just make sure it's in manual, and then turn the key over." And I go, "How do you know if it's in manual?" And this is, I'm 8 years old. I go, "How do you know if it's in manual?" He goes, "Oh, well, it moves back and forth." Now, if you drive a manual, you know that when it moves back and forth, like it moves back and forth. But when you're an 8-year-old, like if it jiggles, it moves back and forth. And I go, "What, it just moves?" He goes, "Yeah, well, it jiggles in first gear. If you don't drive a manual, it does. You put it in first gear and it'll move back and forth." And so I was like, "Yeah, it moves." He goes, "Great, fire up the car." So I fired up the car, and when that happens, it's in first gear, it lurches forward, hits the hot water heater, the front wall of the garage. By the grace of God, my dad's on the side. It goes forward, and it just goes boom, boom. It happens in a split second. Water's coming out, and it's just one of those deals where you're realizing what had happened. And I look at my dad, he's fine. He looks at me, and then all of a sudden it hits me. I'm in deep trouble. What did you do? I told you it was in manual. And I was just like, "I don't know." He goes, "Get up to your room. I'm going to deal with this later." I was like, "Oh, no." So I go up to my room. Now, if you've ever had that happen, like that is the worst moment. Like minutes feel like hours. Right? You're just waiting and waiting. I'm just going, you're thinking about the worst punishment. You're just going, well, I won't ever go to college. I'll be living here for the rest of my life. You think about all these things. And I don't know, it probably 3 or 4 minutes went by. It felt like 3 or 4 hours. And I just remember that moment. I'm sitting there on my bed just dreading what's about to happen. The door opens up, and my dad walks in, a completely different human. Like he walks in, and I was texting with my mom last night. I go, "Did you talk to Dad between like when that happened and when he came upstairs?" And she just goes, "I sure did," smiley face. And I was like, "Oh." Replaying everything, I think she explained to him that an 8-year-old doesn't really know what manual and first gear is. And so he walks in, and I'm just going, I'm dreading this. And he goes, "Hey, buddy." And I'm like, "Who are you?" And he goes, "Hey, it's okay. You didn't know, and it's my fault." And I'm just like, what is going on? And like, it took me 30 years for it to dawn on me, but it dawned on me this week that I just wrecked my dad's Honda into the hot water heater in the garage and got off scot-free thanks to Mom. Yeah, so I texted her last night, but Mom, thanks, you're awesome. So those moments where you realize that Mom believed in you, prayed for you, supported you when no one else did. And Ruth realized that, and she was there, worked hard out in the fields for her mother-in-law, did what her mother-in-law said, but you see this mother-daughter relationship. If your mother, stay faithful. If your child, stay grateful. And if you're a child here in this room, like you're elementary, middle school, high school, like you're still underneath the care of your mom. As grown-ups, it's easy to live life and to look back and go, "Oh, Mom, thank you for doing this, thank you for doing that." If you're a kid still underneath the care of your mom, I'm just going to encourage you right now, thank her sooner rather than later. In fact, just like right now, I'd lean over to her and say thanks. I'd squeeze her arm. I'd do something right now just to say thanks, because my guess is, as of this morning, she's done something to keep you out of trouble. She's stood up for you. She's done something, but be grateful to your mother. She does more for you than you'll ever realize, ever imagine, and it's way better to thank her sooner rather than later. And my kids do this to Brianna every single time she leaves out of town. And so what happens is a couple of times she'll head out of town, go on a ladies' trip, and she'll leave all 4 kids with me. I am their father, so I guess that's a legitimate thing to do. So she goes, "Hey, I'm going to be gone like 2 nights, 48 hours. And like the first 24 hours, they're in heaven. Like my kids are going, "This is the greatest thing ever." Like they're living off of cereal and PJs all day long. Like they'll come to church in their PJs and cereal. And then after that first 24 hours, they begin to realize all that Mom actually does. And usually they're like, "Hey, I think Mom left a list around here, Dad." "Oh, don't worry about the list, son. We'll take care of it." And then after a while, they start going, "Well, no, Mom does this. Mom actually washes our clothes, Dad." And she, makes us take baths and brush our teeth. And I'm just like, oh, you're alive and well. Just hang in there. Mom's coming back. And it's usually about 48 hours, and she comes back. And when she walks in, they're like, oh, you're back, Mom. And I'm like, you weren't starving. You're fine. And there's that moment where they realize Mom does a lot more than they realize. There's somebody in your life, a mother figure in your life that has done more for you than you will ever realize. You stay grateful to the God of the universe who's got his wings over you. You stay grateful to the mother that he's placed in your life. Whether it's a biological mom, stepmom, foster mom, adopted mom, aunt, or grandmother, you stay grateful. Now here's what's interesting. Through all of this, these two ladies, they wind up in the genealogy of Jesus. And then if you go to the end of Jesus' life, he did the same thing for his mother. When Jesus was there up on the cross, his mother's down there and his best friend John is down there. And you can only imagine what thoughts must have been running through Mary's head as she sees her son up there on the cross gasping for air. You had to think all the thoughts of when he was a little kid, that moment, that night when the angels appeared to the shepherds, and then all of a sudden the shepherds walk in, and then the wise men and go through Jesus' life and the miracle. You had to know all those thoughts were running through her mind. There's her son up on the cross. And Jesus, with one of his last breaths, takes care of his mother. He says, Mom, behold your son. Son, behold your mother. And he passes away shortly after that. Take care of your mother. She's been there for you when nobody else is. She's prayed for you, believed in you, supported you. If you're a mom, you stay faithful to God and to your kids. If you're a child, you stay grateful to God and your mother. And we sat down this week and last week with some kids in our student ministry and in our kids ministry. And we just simply asked them their thoughts about their mom. Because when you're at home, it's easy to take mom for granted. Well, she just does things, and she does this, and makes my lunch, and takes me to practice, and runs me around. But we just got them in front of a camera. We just simply asked, tell us about your mom. What do you like about your mom? What do you appreciate about your mom? What are you thankful for about your mom? And all of a sudden, they begin to share, from kids all the way to students. And so we put a little video together, and it's just our way to say thank you to every mom here in this room and every mom watching online. Thank you. Thank you for praying for us. Thank you for believing in us. Thank you for supporting us. At this time, sit back, relax, and let's say thank you to moms.
Clean around the house, cook food, get ready for dinner. Cleaning, watching TV. Comes here and sits in living room 3 and types. She watches TV. She always makes time to come to my games and to my sister's games.
She's always there for me. She's literally my best friend. I can talk to her about everything and anything, and I know that at the end of the day, she's still gonna love me the same. So it's just such a good feeling having a person like that in your life that who's always there for you and who's always just gonna love you for you.
She looks exactly like me, acts like me.
Snuggling.
It's just how joyous she is.
She smiles all the time.
She's very helpful in everything she does for me.
I like that she's really kind, and I love my mama.
No matter what anybody's going through, she can just be a light for them and be a light for me. So if I ever have a bad day, or whether the good times are good or bad, that she can always bring that joy and light into my life and many other people.
I just pooted. So much.
I feel like I don't say this enough, but thank you, Mom, and I love you, and thank you so much for always being there for me.
I've been nervous, Mom.
I wouldn't be the person I am today without her, and that she is the most influential person in my life.
Happy Mother's Day, Mom.
Happy Mother's Day, Mom.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day, Mom.
Happy Mother's Day, Mom. I hope it's a great one because you deserve it.
Happy Mother's Day, Mom.
Happy Mother's Day, Mom.
Happy Mother's Day, Mom. I love you.
Happy Mother's Day, Mom.
Happy Mother's Day, Mom. Happy Mother's Day, Mom.
Happy birthday. Happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day, Mom.
Happy Mother's Day, Mommy.
Happy Mother's Day, Mom.
I probably should have warned you moms to grab a tissue before that video, but we hope you know that we love you, that you are appreciated, and on behalf of myself, the staff, the entire church, happy Mother's Day to everyone. Let me pray for you. Jesus, I thank you for every mom in this room. God, I thank you for their faithfulness. God, I thank you for praying for us, believing in us, supporting us, God, when others in the world don't, when teachers or coaches or other people don't believe in us, there's a mom in our life in our corner who does. And so, God, I pray for every mother here in this room, God, I pray that you would bless them beyond their wildest imagination. And God, for mothers that are going through difficult times right now, God, my prayer is that you would give them an extra ounce of your grace, of your mercy, of your peace, and of your comfort, Lord, to stay faithful to the God of the universe who knows them, loves them, and cares for them. Jesus, I thank you for every mother here in this room, everyone that's watching online. I pray that you go before them and bless them. Jesus, we ask all of these things in your precious and holy name. Amen.